Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into one of the most mysterious and terrifying chapters in biblical history, the story of the Nephilim. These weren't just tall men or legendary warriors. These were the hybrid offspring of fallen angels and human women, giants who once ruled the earth with such violence and corruption that God himself had to intervene with a worldwide flood. From the book of Genesis to the detailed accounts in the book of Enoch, we are going to uncover the complete story of how 200 angels fell from grace, how their children became the stuff of nightmares, and how their legacy continued to haunt humanity long after the floodwaters receded.
So grab your Bible, settle in, and prepare to discover truths that will change how you see the ancient world forever. Picture the world in the days of Jared, Noah's great-great-great-grandfather. The earth was young, pristine, and humanity was multiplying across the land. Genesis 6:1 tells us simply, "When men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them."
But something was stirring in the heavenly realms. The Watchers, powerful angels assigned by God to observe and guide humanity, were about to make a choice that would alter the course of history forever. These weren't ordinary angels. According to the book of Enoch, they were among the highest-ranking celestial beings, beautiful, mighty, and entrusted with sacred responsibilities. Yet, as they watched over humanity, something changed. Genesis 6:2 records the moment that changed everything. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves from all whom they chose. But this wasn't love. This was rebellion of the highest order.
The book of Enoch gives us chilling details that Genesis only hints at. 200 angels, led by one called Samiaza, gathered on Mount Hermon. They knew exactly what they were about to do, and they knew the consequences would be eternal. Samiaza himself hesitated, saying to the others, "I fear that perhaps you will not consent to do this deed, and I alone will become guilty of this great sin." But the others replied with words that sealed their fate. "Let us all swear an oath and bind ourselves with curses so that we do not change our minds."
200 angels in unison swore an oath of rebellion against the Most High God. The very ground trembled as they descended, their radiant forms causing men to stop and stare in wonder and terror. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. What happened next defied the natural order of creation itself. These fallen angels, now called Watchers, took human wives and began to father children. But these weren't ordinary children. Genesis 6:4 tells us, "There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." The Nephilim, half angel, half human, beings of immense stature and supernatural strength. The book of Enoch describes them as giants who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when that wasn't enough, they turned against men themselves and devoured them. These weren't just big people. They were predators, cannibals, monsters who grew so large and so hungry that they began consuming each other. The fallen angels didn't just corrupt humanity through their offspring. They poisoned civilization itself by teaching forbidden knowledge. According to Enoch, Azazel taught men to make weapons of war, swords, shields, and instruments of death. Other watchers taught women how to use makeup and jewelry for seduction. They revealed the secrets of astrology, sorcery, the cutting of roots, and the use of plants for magic.
Humanity, which had lived in innocent simplicity, was suddenly thrust into an age of violence, vanity, and dark arts. The knowledge of warfare spread like wildfire. The art of deception flourished. Magic and occult practices took root in human culture.
Genesis 6:5 captures the result. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The entire world had become corrupted beyond recognition. As the Nephilim grew in size and number, they established themselves as gods among men. Their towering forms and supernatural strength made resistance impossible. Entire tribes bowed before them, building altars in their honor and offering sacrifices to these hybrid beings. Cities rose under their rule, massive stone structures built by giant hands. The walls were adorned with human skulls. Blood flowed in the streets like rivers. Violence became entertainment as the Nephilim staged brutal tournaments and gladiatorial combat.
They ruled as tyrant gods, taking whatever they wanted. Land, possessions, women, lives. Their voices thundered across valleys, their footsteps shook the mountains, and their appetites knew no bounds.
But even as they celebrated their dominion, nature itself began to rebel. The book of Enoch tells us that the earth cried out against them. The seasons became unpredictable. Animals began dying of mysterious diseases. The very ground seemed to exhale a bitter odor, as if creation itself recognized that something was fundamentally wrong. In the midst of this chaos, one man walked in righteousness. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, the man who walked with God. While the world bowed to giants, Enoch remained faithful to the Creator. God took Enoch up to heaven and showed him visions of judgment to come. When Enoch returned, he carried a message that would seal the fate of the Watchers. You have been in heaven, but not all the mysteries have been revealed to you. You have made known forbidden mysteries to women, and through these mysteries, women and men work much evil on earth. Tell them, therefore, that they have no peace. The fallen angels, realizing their doom was approaching, actually pleaded with Enoch to intercede for them. They brought him written petitions, begging him to ask God for mercy. But when Enoch was taken up again to present their case, he returned with tears in his eyes and devastating news. You will not have peace. Your children will fall before your eyes, and you will make supplication, but mercy will not be granted to you. The die was cast. Judgment was coming.
In heaven, the patience of the Almighty had reached its end. Genesis 6:7 records God's declaration, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But first, the ringleaders would be dealt with. 4 archangels received their orders: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. Each had a specific mission in the divine judgment that was about to unfold. Raphael was commanded to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into darkness. The earth opened up, and sharp rocks were placed over him to await the final judgment. Gabriel was sent to incite war among the Nephilim, to make them destroy each other in their arrogance and violence. Michael was tasked with binding the other Watchers and casting them into the valleys of the earth, where they would remain imprisoned until the great day of judgment. and Uriel was sent to warn the righteous of what was coming. While judgment fell upon the watchers, God found one man who still walked in righteousness, Noah. Genesis 6:8-9 tells us, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. The word perfect here is crucial. It means complete or without defect. In a world where the human bloodline had been corrupted by angelic DNA, Noah's lineage remained pure. God commanded Noah to build an ark, a massive vessel 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. For decades, Noah worked on this enormous project while preaching righteousness to a world that mocked him. As the final preparations were made, something supernatural began to happen. Animals started arriving at the ark, not driven by human hands, but called by the voice of their creator. 2 by 2, 7 by 7, they came from every corner of the earth. When Noah and his family entered the ark, Genesis 7:16 tells us something profound. "And the Lord shut him in." God himself sealed the door. The time of mercy had ended. Genesis 7:11 gives us the precise moment. Judgment began. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. This wasn't just rain. The very structure of the earth changed. Underground reservoirs burst forth with tremendous violence. The skies opened like floodgates. Water came from above and below simultaneously. For the first time in their existence, the mighty Nephilim experienced fear. These beings who had terrorized humanity, who had thought themselves invincible, found themselves helpless against the rising waters. They climbed the highest mountains, built the tallest towers, used their supernatural strength to fight the inevitable, but the water kept rising. Genesis 7:20 tells us that the waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered. The screams of the Nephilim filled the air. These beings who had roared with arrogance now cried out in terror. But there was no escape, no mercy, no reprieve. For 40 days and 40 nights the rain fell. Every giant fell. Every corrupted bloodline was eliminated. Every trace of the Watchers' rebellion was washed away. And all flesh died that moved on the earth. Genesis 7:21 records, "The Great Reset had begun. After 150 days, the waters began to recede. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Noah sent out a raven, then a dove, waiting for the sign that the earth was ready for life again. When Noah finally opened the ark and stepped onto dry ground, his first act was worship. He built an altar and offered sacrifices to God. Genesis 8:21 tells us that the Lord smelled a soothing aroma and made a promise. "I will never again curse the ground for man's sake." God then established a covenant with Noah and his descendants, placing a rainbow in the sky as an eternal sign of his promise, never again to destroy the earth by flood. The world was clean. The giants were gone. The corrupted bloodlines had been eliminated. Humanity had a fresh start. But the story doesn't end there. As the descendants of Noah spread across the earth and multiplied, something unexpected began to happen. Giants started appearing again. Numbers 13:33 records the fearful report of the spies sent into Canaan. There we saw the giants. The descendants of Enoch came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. How is this possible? The flood had destroyed all the Nephilim, yet here they were again. The Anakim, the Rephaim, the Emim, the Zamzumim. Different names, but the same terrifying reality. Giants walked the earth once more. The Bible doesn't explicitly explain how this happened, but it's clear that somehow the genetic corruption that produced giants found its way into the post-flood world. Whether through Noah's family line or through some other means, the shadow of the Nephilim had returned. These post-flood giants weren't as massive as their predecessors, but they were still formidable. They built fortified cities, established kingdoms, and once again struck fear into the hearts of ordinary men. But this time, God had a people prepared to face them. When the Israelites came out of Egypt and approached the Promised Land, they encountered these giants head-on. Under Joshua's leadership, they systematically conquered the giant tribes. They defeated the Anakim in Hebron, Debir, and Anab. They conquered Og, king of Bashan, whose iron bed was 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, roughly 13 feet by 6 feet. This gives us some idea of just how massive these beings were. But the most famous giant killer was yet to come. Young David, tending his father's sheep, was called to bring supplies to his brothers on the battlefield. There he encountered Goliath of Gath, nearly 10 feet tall, clad in bronze armor, carrying weapons that ordinary men could barely lift. For 40 days, Goliath had challenged Israel to single combat. The entire army cowered in fear. But David, filled with righteous indignation, stepped forward with nothing but a sling and 5 smooth stones. "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin," David declared. "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." 1 stone, 1 perfect shot. And the giant who had terrorized an army fell face first into the dust.
David's victory over Goliath was just the beginning. As king, David led the systematic elimination of the remaining giant bloodlines. 2 Samuel 21 records the deaths of the last giants. Ishbi-Benob, who tried to kill David but was struck down by Abishai. Saph, killed by Sibbeshai. Lami, brother of Goliath, defeated by Elhanan, and an unnamed giant with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, who fell to David's nephew Jonathan. With each victory, the ancient curse was being broken. Stone by stone, sword by sword, the profane lineage that had corrupted the earth was being eliminated. These weren't victories of superior strength or military might. These were victories of faith. Ordinary men empowered by an extraordinary God to accomplish what seemed impossible. The story of the Nephilim isn't just ancient history. It's a powerful reminder of eternal truths that still apply today. It shows us that rebellion against God, no matter how mighty or impressive it seems, is ultimately doomed to failure. The Watchers were powerful angelic beings. The Nephilim were giants of legendary strength. Yet all fell before the judgment of the Almighty. It demonstrates that corruption, once introduced, spreads rapidly and completely. The forbidden knowledge taught by the Watchers didn't just affect a few individuals. It corrupted entire civilizations, leading to violence, occultism, and moral decay on a global scale. Most importantly, it reveals that God's justice is certain, but His mercy is also real. He preserved Noah and his family through the flood. He raised up David to face Goliath. He has always had His remnant, His faithful ones who trust in Him rather than in the strength of giants.
The story of the Nephilim reminds us that we serve a God who sees everything, judges righteously, and protects His people. From the antediluvian giants who terrorized the ancient world to the post-flood giants who challenged God's chosen people, we see the same pattern. Evil may seem to triumph for a time, but God's justice is certain. If this video has helped you in any way, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing these incredible biblical truths to light. And remember, no matter what giants you're facing today, you serve the God who brought down the Nephilim. Until next time, stay blessed, stay faithful, and keep looking up.